right, this is going to be the last video for this week. So this is about the last section that we're looking at in part 2, section 7, starting from this little bit here on page 91. "Are you deaf?" he shouts. "Did not one of you hear me when I spoke? Or am I so old and feeble now that you no longer feel obliged to take the least notice of what I say? I asked for a cart, an ordinary mule cart, not this carnival wagon. You have done this because you were still thinking in the old way. I told you, I tried to tell you, that my vision was of something new. Now, this time listen. Go down to the marketplace and find me a common work cart such as a man might carry logs in, or fired bricks, or a load of hay. The mule should be strong, the driver too, but nothing more is required. No chariot, no horses. I will ride in the cart on the crossbench beside the driver. Now, this time, bring me what I've asked for. I won't ask again." Alright, so here you've done this because you're still thinking in the old way. So this is hinting at Priam's attitude to this being that he's the leader of this change, and it's his role to convince everyone around him that change is the way forward. So they're still thinking in the old way, and he's saying, "You're not listening to me. This is not what I asked for." Okay, a common work cart, such as a man might carry blah, 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 in. This is actually in this part as well. So the mule should be strong and the driver too, but nothing more is required. Nothing more is required. So here, he's focusing on what's practical and useful rather than ornamental and symbolic. He's starting to embrace the common side, the human sort of side of life that he hasn't really been exposed to so far. Okay. So it is that there appears in the palace courtyard, not long after, a stocky fellow of 50 or so, bull-shouldered, shock-headed, with a countryman's spade-shaped beard, rough cut and of an iron-grey colour, a carter with a reputation among the market people for being reliable enough, but, when he has had a drink or two, a bit of a madcap, and the owner of 2 strong black mules. His name is Somax. Alright, so we here have the first description of Somax. Okay. The princes who found the man waiting in the marketplace to be hired have assured him that he has committed no wrong, for it is not that reason they are bringing him in, but he is apprehensive just the same when they lead him, in his homespun robe and broken sandals, into the palace yard where so many royal persons are assembled. So here, Somax, first of all, assumes that he's in trouble, because that's the only reason why he would be called to such a place, in front of such people. So I think that kind of says a lot about how separate the worlds of the palace and the royals are from the subject. Okay, back to Somax. A plain workman, he has had no experience till now of princes. He is dazzled by the cleanness, the whiteness of everything here. The arms, necks, faces of the women, of some of the men too, who look as if they have never seen sunlight. The columns, the walls of polished stone, the pavement with not a straw in sight. The plump-breasted fan-tailed doves that go strutting around a fountain in a formal way, as if they had been trained to do it, dipping their beaks into its pool. He is surprised too by the tallness of these Trojans, and their voices, which are thin and high-pitched, unlike his own and those of the folk he lives among. Alright, this is an interesting description of the Trojans and the palace through the eyes of one of Priam's subjects, Somax. So we can see he's looking around and he's not familiar with anything he's seeing. This is a completely new world to him. Examples of language like, where am I looking? So the arms, necks and faces of the women and men look as though they've never seen sunlight. So that's a reference to, if they haven't seen sunlight, it's because they're spending a lot of their time indoors. So they're not working in the fields like the subjects are. So this is completely different to the world that Somax has been exposed to so far. Completely different from Priam's world. He hangs his head and studies the pavement between his feet. He is here, he knows, not for himself, but because of his mules, and especially the smaller of the two, which, the moment they entered the marketplace, caught the eye of one of the princes, as she does everyone's. She is such a plain charmer. A little black thing, strong in the withers, but also dainty. Her winning nature has much to do with her intelligence, which is there for all to see, and with the fact that she notices people and responds in such a lively way to their interest. Beauty, he calls her. He has raised her up himself, coaxing and sweet-talking her, rewarding her with tidbits from his palm, scratching her downy ears and whispering his small secrets to her. In the tavern where he goes to enjoy a little company, to hear a joke or two, and escape in lightheadedness the harshness of his life, he talks so warmly and so often of his little mule that he is teased for it with all sorts of coarse but joking suggestions. And it is true, he is a little in love with the creature. So it is the mule that has brought him here, and because of her that he now stands in the royal palace, in a courtyard crowded with princes and their ladies, and rather fearful under their gaze of what might be expected of him. He does not recognise at first the spare old fellow, very plainly dressed in a white robe, who gets up out of a chair, comes close, and subjects him to scrutiny. He has seen King Priam only at a distance, an imposing figure, long-boned and tall, standing very straight and stiff in his chariot, never face to face like this. He is surprised how old he looks, how sunken and deeply scored the cheeks, and deeply set in their sockets, and milky pale the eyes under their straggle of white brows. All right. So, here we have a description of Priam through the eyes of Somax. He doesn't recognise him, the spare old fellow, plainly dressed, so like Priam seen in his dream. He's dressing the part of that now. He's referred to as King Priam. So again, this is a reference to what Priam's been saying, that his subjects see him only really as a figure, as the leader of the Trojans, and not as a man himself. So he's seen King Priam only at a distance, so he's never been able to subject him to scrutiny, but now he's up close. He's able to see, because they've never come face to face like this, he's able to see how old he looks. His cheeks are sunken and deeply scored, and his eyes are deeply set and milky pale, the straggle of white brows. So basically what Somax is sort of saying here is that his perception of Priam up until this point has been very different, which is exactly what Priam has been saying he does on purpose. So he does keep his distance from the subjects. He doesn't say anything really. He has his herald who says things for him. And all of this is to create the perception that Priam is tall, standing straight and stiff. So he's very regal, he's imposing. But in reality, he's not letting people get this close because this is what they will see. Alright, so, Priam says at last, they have explained to you what we are to do? The man nods. He does not know how he should address the king, and is conscious, among so much lilting and lisping, of his own harsh-sounding gutturals. Alright, so lilting and lisping in comparison to harsh-sounding gutturals. So this is just another way in which Somax is comparing himself as a common subject to the royals that he's around. So the differences between them are not just in class, but it's also in the way that they speak, the way that they look. It's everything about them. He glances for help to the two princes, who frown but nod. They have, he ventures. I am to drive to the Greek camp. The king draws closer. The carter thinks he might be taking a whiff of him. He shifts uncomfortably and lifts his shoulders in the looseness of his robe. His nose itches and he has a powerful urge to rub it, but resists. All this, he thinks, along with his smell, the old man, who has come very close now, is taking into account and judging. At last, with no change of expression, the king turns to face the princes. Alright, so Somax is very much under the impression that he's being judged, but he also is judging Priam at the same time. So we can see that they are essentially approaching each other in a very similar way, but we're also continuously through this passage told of the vast differences between Somax and Priam.